Good day and welcome to the City Point podcast. Talking all things cricket. I'm joined by Richard Hanson, New Zealand cricket tragic and freelance journalist, and Declan Hooper from Wickets and Pickets. Yeah, gentlemen, it's been a busy week again for cricket, not least the fact that cricket could be a possible sport at the Olympics in Los Angeles. Your thoughts on that, boys?
I mean, look, there's if BMX cycling's allowed in, then I think cricket certainly got a place at the table. And if you look at some of the sides who would potentially look to do well and get a gold medal, I mean, India are terrible at the Olympics. India have like, if you look at, as a New Zealander, my favourite medal table is looking at like the gold medals per capita, because New Zealand tend to do quite well relative to that. But you look at the bottom of that, and that's the India. Like one bronze or one silver, and
they won one gold in the men's one gold in the men's javelin, which is pretty unusual for India.
Yeah, but you know what? Anything to get cricket on the world stage, and the fact that they've got T20 cricket, or even 100. I mean, I'm T20 cricket, let's be honest, does provide a format that would work okay at the Olympics. I mean, football is a comparative in terms of a time that it takes and things, and they managed to have a football tournament, and tennis as well. And they've done baseball and things in the past. But yeah, I mean, I guess the only thing is there's only going to be a few contenders for the medals.
Yeah.
But then I don't see why not.
You could say that about swimming.
Yeah,
you?
I mean,
because you got Australians, Americans, and British are the only ones who are really going to win medals at swimming.
And you could say that about rugby sevens. Fiji, New Zealand, Great Britain are kind of the only. Yeah, but then I was actually thinking about this before we came on, and there'd be a few logistical issues that they'd probably have to overcome. Firstly, England couldn't compete as England. They'd need to compete as Great Britain. Yeah. But more importantly, the West Indies couldn't compete as the West Indies. So you'd have to have a team from Barbados, a team from Antigua, a team from Jamaica, which, would be really interesting to see how those sides turned out, because you don't really, you never, you know about all these West Indian legends of the game, but you don't think to yourself, that guy's Jamaican, that guy's from Barbados, that guy's Antiguan. And these countries are very different. So, yeah, I mean, it could add a new flavour to it.
I actually think that they'd probably be one of the front. If it was, say, T20, I think that's what they have announced, that it is going to be T20, is the format of cricket that they're looking for. I mean, the CPL is essentially already that. It's Barbados, Jamaica, Trinidad, I think it's Antigua, and whatever else.
St. Lucia.
Yeah, St. Lucia.
Which is where Jason Holder's from, and Darren Sammy was from St. Lucia. So
but essentially, they've already got a team there ready to go.
Great.
So you could say that they're probably one of the favourites in that. I mean, West Indies generally do quite well in the T20 format anyway.
Well, you could see Owen Morgan would probably have to play for Ireland But yeah, it'd probably be a majority of them would be English, wouldn't they? It's a bit like the hockey team. Yeah. Most of the Great Britain hockey team is English. Most of the rugby team was English.
And in terms of promoting the game, to areas which we wouldn't otherwise do it, I think the fact that if it does happen with those Olympics being in the USA. Obviously, the majority of the crowd would be American, and you'd have people being exposed to this sport, and anything to raise cricket's profile. I mean, I think personally that the fact that the big three, Australia and England and India, kind of dominate 98% of all the cricket is a bit of a tragedy. But what I'd like
to see is some of the Pacific Islanders, Papua New Guinea and Fiji and Vanuatu, where cricket is bloody huge.
Absolutely.
Vanuatu. I've been to Vanuatu where they're playing cricket like in the streets, like they do in India. So it's
And that's the thing. It gives these smaller nations something to shoot for. You can take away this whole, when the 50 over World Cup, when they only let in whatever it was, 10 sides or something stupid. There's something really to be said for the fact that you could watch India play Papua New Guinea in a group match. Which as you know, the Olympics is not all about winning. It's about taking part, which would really change things, I think, and raise the profile of the game.
Great stories of how people have got there as well. Like the Vanuatuans, for example, their cricket field, their main cricket field in the capital. I can't think of the capital's name, but
Port Vila.
Port Vila. It's like it's almost like a cabbage patch, but. Yeah. You imagine if they did get to the Olympics, how much they could get from actually trying to get a team going. Because there's a team. I remember a Vanuatuan team came to Brisbane a couple of years ago and did a tour of Queensland. And they were quite successful. And I think they were coached by an ex-Australian cricketer of some description. I can't remember who it was, but. Them, Papua New Guinea, Fiji, Samoa. Don't forget, cricket, actually, expats in America. Cricket's quite a big sport in America, played by
subcontinent expats,
ex-people from India or America or England or Australia. So you never know what...
Well, I also think the expanding the game, I mean, that's the obvious... upside to this, but I also think a lot of the Olympic sports, they get government funding for the sports comes through being an Olympic sport. So these smaller nations that you're talking about, they get funding. These Olympic sports get funding through the government for being an Olympic sport. So if you're looking at you mentioned the Pacific Islands, but then even parts of Europe, Holland have been kind of there or thereabouts for quite a long time.
You don't mention Holland when you speak about T20 cricket in England, mate. We all go back to that famous game where...
Well, exactly.
So that's what can happen. I mean, look at Ireland, Kenya, and World Cups going by. These for so long, the ICC has tried to knock down these smaller nations, making the World Cup smaller. Letting in less teams, obviously. Even the T20 World Cup, they have to play a round robin before they get to the group stage of the T20 World Cup. I think this would be an opportunity. I mean, you'd have to see how many nations they'd let in, because, as you mentioned before, you've probably got 4 or 5 from the West Indies that would get in. So it'd depend on how big the actual tournament is. But it could be something for your likes of, the Vanuatu's, or even like Hong Kong, them kind of places to actually compete. Yeah. And I mean, don't forget, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, that was your likes of your Bangladesh, even Afghanistan more recently. Look, Rashid Khan's probably the best short form spinner in the world. And 10 years ago, Afghanistan wasn't even recognised as really a cricket playing nation. It was it was in that lesser group when you're talking about Holland and whatever else. So I think it would be great. I really do think strongly. I think it is. I mean, credit where it's due. The ICC has been, as I said, they've really let down these small nations and failed to expand the game after many opportunities. And I think this is a step in the right direction. And you see, as you mentioned, rugby sevens before. I mean, Fiji won the gold medal for that. I mean, when else would Fiji win a gold medal realistically at the Olympics? And I think it's a great success. Oh, exactly. It's a great success story.
It was their first. It was their first gold medal. Well, they won the gold in Rio in the men's, and then they backed it up just now. And so they've won 2. The other thing that's interesting to note, is that they would have to be obviously there would be a women's tournament played alongside the men's tournament, and so you would be showcasing women's cricket worldwide as well. And I mean, I know the women's game is growing in profile and for a number of great reasons, but it would just be another way to do that. And there's historical precedent. The cricket was in the 1998 Commonwealth Games, and it was actually done it was actually 50 over cricket as far as I know, that was done. South Africa took out the gold medal that time. So
And
cricket has been in the Olympics before, gentlemen. Even before my time, before you.
I was going to say, was that 1912 or something when you were in primary school, something like that?
Yeah. Actually, 4 years. I was in kindergarten. It's 1908.
Oh, sure, great.
At London, and Great Britain are the reigning champions. So that's something we can hold on to. For at least
that's great.
We're the reigning champions. Until 2028. So that would be something. It'd be like 1908 to 2028. Be 120 years since the last played
also, I noticed that you speak about the Commonwealth Games, that women's cricket has been included in the next Commonwealth Games in Birmingham. So they'll be playing at Edgbaston. So I mean, you could see that as being a bit of a trial run for that. I think. I mean, obviously you'll have England and Ireland and Scotland and whatever else, and it'll be Great Britain to be slightly different. But I think raising the women's game, I think is definitely a big thing that needs to happen within cricket as well. I think it's a great way of doing both, lifting the minority countries and also women's cricket at the same time. Also, the only thing that worries me about the Olympics is if it becomes like the football at the Olympics, which is essentially just a procession. The women's football, it's massive. It had the highest viewing figures of any women's sport in Australia. The match the other day against, I think it's Great Britain versus Australia in the women's football. However, if the relative boards, the Indian or the English boards, treat it as the football boards do and treat it as a bit of a procession, I think it could really make a mockery of it.
Yeah, so what I fear would happen is the majority of Olympics are held in July and August or so, more or less, unless...
I've just checked. It'll be 21st of July to the 6th of August.
Okay, so we have the first test of the Ashes at Lords or something at the same time as the Olympics. So they've just got to look at the scheduling. And
there's ways around that though. There's ways around that.
Yeah,
I think.
Of course. There are ways around that.
Under 23s, make it like they do with the football. Make it under 23s only.
No, I wouldn't want that at all.
I would watch that.
I think it needs to be the pinnacle. I really do. I think. Sorry, go on.
No, I just echo Declan in that for it to be successful, in my opinion, you need to have the best players in the world in that tournament. Yeah. It can't be like the men's football, which is where it is an under 23 thing. If somehow the ICC were able to clear the calendar, as they do for World Cups, as they do for other tournaments, Champions Trophy, etc., and just have nothing else going on at the same time. Because then you won't have players being caught in this position. You look at the rugby sevens. There are players from there are All Blacks, the Wallabies, players from other sides of the world who have turned down international seasons because they want to go to the Olympics, and so they joined the Seventh Circuit for that year.
Sammy Radradra was one of those.
Yeah, but you don't want to see that. You don't want to have to make that choice, in my opinion.
I think in an ideal world, every 4 years, the 4 year cycle for me should be, or for cricket should be a 50 over World Cup, a T20 World Cup, a World Championship, World Test Championship, and an Olympics, and have them once a year for 4 years, and then you repeat. So you have essentially a pin or a showcase every year of some sort. And I think that, to me, that would be the best way of doing that, and the best way of, I suppose, making it so that it is a pinnacle, or it is something that, the best of the best want to play in, rather than, I don't know, playing a Test series against Sri Lanka or whatever the case may be. You know what I mean?
And having it, winning an Ashes series or winning a T20, winning a World Cup, but also having an Olympic gold medal. It's a pretty big deal for an athlete, and the opportunity to go to the Olympics. And just as if you're a young cricketer and you're coming through the ranks and you're thinking, you know what, I'd love to play for Australia, I'd love to win the Ashes, but also I have the opportunity. I imagine winning a gold medal would be, it'd be huge.
A big thing of that would, I think, obviously you've got Los Angeles in 2028, but then you've got Brisbane in 2032, and I mean the ground, the Olympic Stadium will be the Gabba. So, I mean, I think they've got no choice but to make it a success for me. In terms of if it is a success in LA, or obviously it needs to be picked first, but they need to, in my opinion, go all out and make sure it is a showpiece in LA, so that then when it comes to Brisbane in 2032, then you've got a ready built fan base. You probably that would be the most followed. I mean, other than swimming or whatever, that would probably be the most supported Olympic sport there at the Gabba.
Oh yeah, imagine tickets to the final, the gold medal match of the, I don't know, Australia versus New Zealand. The Gabba would be brilliant.
Yeah, exactly. So for me, I think it's a great step in the right direction, but you do have to caveat that with the fact that, like, it needs to, for me, as I said, it needs to be treated as such. It needs to be treated as a pinnacle type thing.
The only thing that, well, not only thing, but one other thing that I think they might struggle is that if you look at the IOC and you look at who is in charge and the countries that dominate the IOC, look at the Olympic, China aren't going to be competitive. Russia is not going to be competitive if they're ever allowed back in the Olympics. The United States are not going to be competitive. You know what I mean? So like those top countries who, Great Britain, Australia, but they're a little bit further down the table in things. So you'd need a bit of.
But I do think that rugby sevens has probably shown. Like, I mean, rugby is just as much of a colonial sport as cricket is, essentially. Yeah. I mean, yes, they've probably spread their wings a lot further than cricket has, and I mean that's all down to the ICC diminishing them smaller nations in the past. But I mean, you've seen now, like, Brazil has got professional women's cricketers, and they've come on leaps and bounds. Thailand's playing in the last Women's World Cup. Like, there is underneath there is bubblings of these cricket nations that like Brazil's a massive population, fifth biggest population in the world. If you could tap into them kind of markets, and I'm not saying that it's going to be the number one sport, but if you can somehow tap into the expat populations in the US or whatever, then cricket has the potential. Cricket's already got one of the biggest fan bases in the world.
If there's space for skateboarding and there's space for BMX biking,
rock
I mean,
climbing.
no disrespect to them, because I watched those events and they were great. But if there's space for those, then there's space for cricket. Sure.
Rock climbing, please. Do me a favour, please.
I do agree. I think I think it's one of them. The other thing I do think that could be a problem, especially in America, is that kind of thing, is stuff like there's a lot of variables within cricket, and like your pitches, and like if it rains and that kind of thing could be a bit of a problem. Like, I know surfing was in the Olympics and they had a bit of problems with the swell and that kind of thing, and usually with the World Surfing Championships they just wait it out a few days until they get a swell and do the competition then. Obviously they couldn't do that because they're under time constraints with the Olympics. I mean, you do worry if for instance it starts raining for 3 or 4 days. I mean, I don't know what it's like in LA then, but you know what I mean.
Pretty
well,
hot,
yeah. I mean, California's not dissimilar to parts of Australia in the summer.
No.
But the thing is,
all year round, probably.
But the thing is that format is key here, because something like T20 doesn't matter if it's daytime, doesn't matter if it's nighttime. And you just got to be sensible about the scheduling, rather than saying, this game's been abandoned. Just, if it was in the 10 a.m. till 1 p.m. slot, we'll just move everything forward, that kind of thing. Be a bit more like tennis. And if you end up having to finish games at 2 o'clock in the morning, you finish games at 2 o'clock in the morning. It's a special event. And, you'll still get TV audience, and the, crowd will still get value for money. There's definitely ways around that, and obviously drainage of grounds, and T20 being what it is, you obviously don't need the same level of preparation of pitches, and there's you can use the same pitch more than once, and players can play games twice a day, more than one every day, that kind of thing. So I think there's solutions.
Positive news, and hopefully fingers crossed it does come to pass, and There's one more sport I can watch. All right, well, thanks again for joining us there, lads. We'll see you again soon, eh?
Thank you very much.